Hey guys, it's Kevin again, here for Bloodline Season 1, Episode 4, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. I mean, after Episode 3, I became in love with this show, and this episode was no exception, because I thought this episode was even better than Episode 3. You know, this episode made me realize, guys, this is probably my favorite, family show on TV. When I say family show, like a show about a family, it's probably my favorite show about that on TV. I mean, just this episode was so different from the first three. It was a lot more hopeful, and it ditched the whole present part of it, because you know how it usually has the parts where we see the present. That's not in this episode, and I actually really enjoyed that it wasn't included in this episode. I thought that was really well done, because this episode was a lot more hopeful and was more about just seeing the past, and we found a lot more about this episode, and I loved it. And this is probably the best episode of the season, definitely. I love this episode. Let's just get into it because it was amazing. So at night we see some men are. By the way, guys, I was. I do want to say this. I was planning on watching episodes 4 and 5 this week, but I'm actually not going to do that because this episode was honestly really satisfying. It had enough for me for one episode, and I'm probably going to just watch episode 5 next week, so that's what I'll do. So we see at night, we see some men looking out into the ocean with binoculars at what first appears to be an empty boat. Underneath the boat, there are these group of attempted immigrants. They're sitting quietly, being smuggled into the Keys, and suddenly this man enters the boat above the water, and he lights a fire. And the people below start to panic as their cabins fill with smoke until it explodes entirely. And that right there, I thought was a crazy way to start the episode, but that basically sets up our big case of the episode, because basically John and Marco go out to investigate, and Marco says it was found pretty far south from where they discovered the body to come from, the front half of the boat, as the back half has been blown off. And they meet Kevin on the dock, who's also helping them. He said it's a real piece of work. John asks if he can tell him where the boat was built, and Kevin says it has been repurposed, cobbled together from God knows where. So they know that this boat was reincarnated and everything. So he does say that's definitely not a local boat, and John thanks him for letting them tow it out there, and he jokes with John to not smoke in boat, and I definitely really enjoyed that. He asks if he will help Danny fix up their father's truck, and he asks what he is messing with the truck for. He says they have to find the parts for it. He says he will help him, and I thought that was a really good scene. I definitely really enjoyed that. We get a lot more focus with Robert in this episode, which I thought was really cool. The reason we don't get any flash forwards this week is because we have a lot of flashbacks in this episode. Because Robert sits peacefully outside the hospital. He's playing ukulele and he's remembering Sarah. And we see the same scene on the beach as last week, with Sarah smiling and him looking at her. Until his thoughts are abruptly filled with harsher memories of young Danny. All we see is Danny, screaming. We don't know what's going on. We see these flashbacks throughout the whole episode, but it was really cool the way they did that. I definitely really enjoyed that. It made us more intrigued in the story and made me care more about the story, which I thought was great. So he stops playing when a string breaks and tells Sally that she is right about exactly what she's thinking. And he compares her to the bug on the leaf. He says it is in the same boat as them just hanging on. He laughs, and Sally asks if he feels like playing the ukulele, shows her broken string, and she laughs. He says he feels like going home, and I thought that was really good. That finally now he's gonna go home, and I really like that. So Marco says the guys can't get them any point of origin information on the boat. All the serial numbers were burned in the fire, so they're really fucked. I mean, they really don't have much information, and John asks if there's any evidence the fire was started intentionally or caused by an explosion, and Marco says no. So they really don't know what's going on here, if the fire was intentional or if someone accidentally did it. So he hands him this document though and tells him to check out page 3. The chemical markers in the boat's fuel match that found on the dead girl. They realize she was on the boat. So clearly there's some sort of connection there. We don't know what it is yet though. So John seems to think that it was an accident. Marco says he ain't buying that shit. He says there's no way a 15-year-old girl, and I agree what he's saying here. There's no way a 15-year-old girl is going to be alone on a boat like that. I mean, many things could happen. There could be really bad men there. She could end up, being a prostitute and things like that. It could end up really bad for her. So Marco agrees. He says there had to have been someone else there. Marco thinks it's about immigration, except she's not going to cross the Gulf Stream on her own. He says maybe they made it to dry land, and John tells him to check berm wards and start there. there. So they definitely have a lot, information that they don't know, but they're starting to find out more, which I like seeing. And honestly, I really like seeing Marco and John work together. Definitely. I mean, we haven't seen as much in the first three, so seeing it here, I definitely like that. So Meg shows Robert the will with his signature, and he says it looks like his signature. He says he thought her, John, and Kevin, who he briefly forgets Kevin's name, because he still has those memory issues. So he says he thought that they were going to equally divide it, and basically, didn't even think it over. And she says they will do whatever he likes. If he has anything he wants to explain or any questions to let her know. He says he already signed it. She says she knows, but he was in the ICU and she thought he changed his mind, so she didn't file it. So, and he tells her that nothing's changed and to just file it. And basically, she says Danny's living and working at the inn now, and he's doing a great job. And he asks what she expects him to do with this. She says she was hoping Danny and him could work things out. And, we know that they don't like each other. They don't, get along very well, and she was hoping that maybe they could repair that. But basically, she tells him that she's his lawyer, and that if that's what he wants, she will file it today. He looks at the will and tells her he will think about it. So I thought that was really interesting because I was thinking, okay, maybe these two are actually going to connect, and that could be really cool to see. Because that's honestly something I'd like to see, is seeing these two connect. Because we have yet to see them. We have yet to see, Danny and Robert not be at each other's throats, and to not see them fight, I think would be really cool to see. So I was wondering if he'd actually try to do that. So basically, we then see basically we see in the morning Danny is cleaning up the beach, and Sally tells him Robert is back and he's okay with him being here. And Danny's pretty surprised because he knows that, Robert essentially did not want him back. And basically he says he can stay with John, for a couple days. And Sally says she wants him here. And honestly, this is probably the episode where I love Danny's character, I have to say. I like that he's not as bad as we think he is. And again, we see in this episode that he is not as bad as they've been perceiving him. This is probably the most normal we've ever seen Danny, and I love seeing that. And really being with the family is making him normal, and that's really what makes me worried at the end of this episode, which I will get to. But basically, they start fresh every day, and inside Robert's watching them and looks concerned, and I'm just thinking, maybe he thinks, to me, I thought that was him just thinking maybe it's just too good to be true, because, I mean, it does seem kind of sudden that Danny is just suddenly a really nice guy and everything. I think it just was a matter of time, the people he was hanging out with. I mean, the only reason he was acting the way he was because of Eric, and now he's not working with Eric, he's starting to turn to a better person. So Meg and Alec are in the car having sex. He asks if she had something against the motel. She says she has to get ready for the meeting, and then he doesn't look sweaty at all. And I thought that was a good scene overall. I like seeing Alec's character, but again, I really feel bad for Marco because he has no idea this is going on. Marco, that's not in this episode though. So Kevin's in his job. He's talking to Jake about how the doctor wants them to put in a new jack plate and they have to do it in 3 weeks. He says they will make it happen, and Kevin sees Susie talking to some people. Jake says they don't look like tourists. Kevin then gets upset, curses because Nick the Dick is home. And I'm like, who's Nick the Dick? Like, who is he talking about? I thought this was going to be like a child, like someone that he didn't get along with or something like that. And we find out more about him later, but he gets out of his car, joins the conversation, and Kevin looks kind of upset. So Meg is at work, and she says it's not going to happen. She says they could lobby the committee for the next year, but at the end of the day, they're not going to let them put in a landing strip. And they tell her that there's nothing within the regulations that forbids it. She says they hired her for her advice. Even if they say yes, the community won't allow it. It's basically a waste of time and resources. Unless it's a deal breaker, they should not move forward. And I have to agree. I mean, honestly, for something like that, if you're just going to move forward with something that doesn't work, why move forward with it? I understand what she's saying there. So, Danny, Robert, Kevin, and John all attend one of Ben's baseball games, and they seem to be getting along really well. This really starts the hopeful heart of this episode. This episode had a lot of heart to it, and I really loved it. And there were a lot of just fun scenes like this one in this episode. I mean, I never thought the show would give us this, but I love it they did that, because the first two episodes have been so dark and things, and this episode was so much more hopeful and a lot more fun. And Danny jokes about how he wished he would have looked half as good as Ben does at his age. He would have made friends better, and I thought that was a funny scene overall. They're just fucking around with each other. And while at baseball, Sally, Meg, Belle, Diana, and all the girls are now hanging out, and I really like seeing them work together. I read an article from the AV Club who reviewed this episode, and they said they could watch an entire episode just watching these four women talk, and I have to agree, it was so funny to watch. I love seeing it, and it was one of the highlights of the episode by far. So Meg says she brought the tonic, celebrating that Robert is out of the hospital. Meg tells her to relax and have fun, let the wheels stop turning, and she says she really only has an hour. She says she missed being with them. They toast to Robert coming home, and I definitely really enjoyed that, because, I mean, Sally does need to sort of relax. I mean, she's had so much stress that it might just be best for her to relax, and I like that Meg told her to. So back at the game, Danny looks over. Robert has fallen asleep. Kevin asks if he was sneaking beers or something, and John says he will take him home. And Kevin says leave him. He needs his rest, and he again dreams of Sarah. But this time we see she had this seashore necklace and seahorse necklace. And John wakes him up and asks if he wants to take him home. He says no and asks what's the score. So back home, Diana and Sally talk about Janie's Sweet 16. You know, Diana's daughter, Janie. They joke about Meg's suite she had that Kevin and John crashed and started singing with the band, and I thought that was funny to find out. And basically, Diana says Janie wants to keep it real small, and Meg tells Belle Kevin told her what happened, and if she really wants to talk, she's here. Belle thanks her but tells her she does not want to talk about it right now. She wants to talk about it at the dock. Now, we don't see them have a conversation about this in the episode. So, does Belle really want to work things out with Kevin? I'm honestly not sure if she even cares about working things out. I mean, she didn't bring it up. She never brings it up again in the episode. So, I'm wondering if she really does care. I mean, Kevin clearly wants to work things out with her, and he's made an effort to do that. But she does not want to seem to really work things out. So, I don't really know. What do you guys think? Do you think that she wants to work things out? To me, it just seems like she doesn't really want to. So Diana says Janie plans on just having an overnighter with her best friends, and I love that Sally got concerned over it because she was worried that she was going to be there alone. I thought that was really funny. So John takes Robert home. He tells him he gave them the decision on whether or not Danny was going to stay or not, and asks him if he remembers that, because yeah, he did do that. And he says he does. He says they decided all together, and that Danny shouldn't stay, but he told Danny that was Robert's decision, and he apologized, and Robert actually seems okay with it. Probably because I think he kind of does want Danny to leave. I mean, you can tell that he's not really comfortable with him being there. However, this next scene, I absolutely loved this next scene. It was one of the highlights of the episode, and it was just such a fun scene. I love seeing this, because this is the first time we actually see Danny and Kevin really bond, because Danny and Kevin are struggling to bring the old truck back to life, and Kevin says he told him not to mess with the fucking truck, and Danny says he thought it was reverse psychology, and that's something I love about this episode, is that it was just so funny. Already you can see how many funny moments are in this episode, and I love that. He says he changed the carb, changed the battery, and all the ignition shit. He still can't get it to turn over. Kevin asks about the cap and rotor. He says he didn't do that. He tells him to look at it because he has to go do the welcome tour. He tells him to take a shower if he's doing a tour because he smells like ass. Danny tells him he's no better. And it seems like they're really bonding here. They're really becoming friends again. They're really joking around with each other, and I love seeing that. Because, you know, Kevin did not trust Danny, but now that he's seen Danny's actually doing something with his life and he's actually making an effort to turn his life around, I mean, he's really surprised he's actually doing this, but I was very surprised to actually see these two really bond really well. I love seeing it, and I also would love to see more interaction between them. I think that it's really fun to watch those two interact, definitely, especially because who would have thought that those two would have bonded, especially because Kevin didn't trust Danny, so just seeing him bond with Danny, I love seeing. So basically, we then see that Susanna then basically, wait, before that though, Marco calls John and he says he thinks they may have made a breakthrough in the case and to tell him to come over there. So Suzanne then talks to Meg and tells her that they took her advice and decided not to move forward with the project. Meg says it was probably the best decision, and she tells Meg they were all very impressed by her and asks if she wants to join a larger firm in New York. And basically, you know, Meg talks about how she's gotten a lot of offers before, and, you know, it's not, she always gets those offers, and she says she doesn't give a shit about the law, she just likes helping people. She says her family lives here, and they're very close, and she likes helping them, and Susanna says she understands, and Meg basically tells her that she wants to stay in Florida. She doesn't want to leave, and I thought that was a really good scene. I definitely really enjoyed that. It shows how much she cares about her family, and I just really like that scene. So Marco tells Kevin the gas with the same chemical marker is found on, wait, wait, no, he tells John. I said Kevin. Why did I say Kevin here? Sorry, guys, I wrote this recap, and I wrote Kevin instead of John. I don't know why. So Marco tells John that the gas with the same chemical marker is found in the boat and on the girl, and the cameras never work. John tells him to find him who owns the boat because there is a camera that works, and Danny then returns to the hotel to give a new group of guests a tour, and just like last week, we see him being really successful at this and doing a really good job, and I like seeing Danny on this tour, helping out these people. He really seems to be loving it. You really see him lighting up here, and you see him really doing a really good job with doing that. I definitely enjoyed seeing that, and it was a lot of fun to watch, and Danny plays ukulele, Robert plays the ukulele nearby, and again he remembers Sarah. It's the same flashback, and his memory turns dark, and a young Danny shown racing to a shore in a boat shouting to his father, and somehow these two scenes connect. We don't know how, but somehow these two scenes connect, and I like that we keep seeing it throughout the episode. It just makes us, the more we see it, the more intrigued I became at it. So back at the shipyard, Kevin sees Nick, and we actually find out more about Nick's character. This is actually one of Kevin's old friends, and now you kind of see why Kevin is surprised that he's back, because he asked what he's doing back, and he's supposed to be at Berkeley. He's now in Stanford, and basically that he's back to help his mom. She officially put the property back on the market, and they got a few buyers, and he asked what they want to develop, and he said it's none of his business. And basically, I like seeing these two interact, but I definitely feel like there's more to the story. I don't really know where this is going, but I like finding out more about Kevin and his past. I like seeing that. So John and Marco look at the footage from the area. John tells him to hold it there, and Marco says he keeps trying to back it up. The footage is too grainy and very indescribable. You can't really tell what's on it, and basically Kevin then meets with Robert. He tells him it's great to see him back in action, and I definitely enjoyed seeing this scene, because these are two people who really were really against Danny staying, and just seeing them have this conversation, I really loved. And basically, he asked him to play something, and he didn't realize how the uke reminded him of this place until he was back to strum it. Because he realizes that he used to play it all the time. And basically, he tells him that he really missed it. He tells him that he really thinks Danny is turning it around, and he can't believe that Danny is actually doing that. Because, Danny all these other times says he was going to do it, and he didn't. And for once, he's actually turning it around, and he's doing great. And Robert says he was watching Ben the game, was wondering when Kevin is going to have children, and basically he says he hears them, they are working on it, he hears him, he's working on it soon enough, and not to worry about it. So I'm not really sure if that's true, though, because we know that Belle and Kevin don't really, you know, work out well, but of course nobody knows about that except for Meg, so definitely they need to work it out somehow, because, I definitely feel like Robert wants Kevin to keep that promise to him, but we'll see what happens there. So Danny and Kevin fix the truck up and successfully get the truck up and running, and I was surprised they actually did that. I was very happy they did that together, and that was great to see that happen. So another body is found with similar burn wounds as the first body found, except this one has been in the water longer, and Marco thinks that it's unlikely that the boat explosion was an accident. And then we see Eric, and when we saw Eric, I'm like, oh shit, this is not going to end well for Danny. We see that Eric gets a call from Wayne. He says he has another job for him. He asks if he prepped the cans. He's seeing a big delivery, and he says it's not a problem, and it doesn't seem like a concern now until we see the end of the episode, which I will get to. Robert begins to review his will, but quickly stops and puts it away. He goes outside where Danny's helping two young guests prepare for their swimming trip, and I thought it was cute to see him interact with these two little girls. He asks Robert if he's going to be around later. He has a surprise for him, and one of them has a necklace similar to Sarah's seahorse necklace, and we see another flashback. Danny runs out and sees something shocking, and we don't know what it is. So Megan talks to Alec to her in her office, and she wants to know if Susanah asked her to come to New York as an indirect method of getting her to move closer to him. Because, of course, we know that he really likes her, but to her, it just seems like he's a fuck buddy. That's what it seems like to me. Because, as we know, Meg doesn't really get attached to people, so to me, it just seems like he's like her fuck buddy, basically. But I don't know. And he says that anything she suggested was purely on merit, and that while she did a good job, he certainly didn't recommend her. So I'm thinking maybe he did. He just doesn't really want to tell her, because it seems like something he would do. So what do you guys think? Do you think he actually told her about it? I'm interested in seeing what you guys actually think is going on there. So Robert then plays the ukulele and is singing, and Meg finds him. She asks if he made a decision, and she says it's no rush. It's no rush. They shouldn't take too long. They should file something. And Robert says he's closing on it, and I like seeing Robert play that song to Meg. I thought that was really sweet. I like seeing their interaction overall. And Robert then drives Danny, John, and Kevin around that afternoon in his now repaired truck. He promised them he would do that, and it was one of the more lighthearted moments of the episode. And the episode in general was lighthearted, except for this final scene. This last scene was really sad. Because at first, Robert tries to talk to Sally about the will, and I understand why Sally doesn't want to talk about it. She tells him that he's not going anywhere. He's completely fine. Why are they talking about a will? They shouldn't worry about it. They did have that scare, and I feel like Sally isn't, thinking the possibility of that this could happen again, because it definitely could, but I think that Sally just doesn't really want to go through any other drama right now. I think that's really what it's all about. So Instead of that happening, Robert takes Danny to dinner, and that's basically the surprise that Danny had for Robert. And he told Danny that Kevin and John would be there, but he tells him that they're not coming. And he admits to his son that he actually wants him to leave and not come back. And I'm just thinking, I understand that because you can see that he wasn't really comfortable with him being there. And Danny thinks that too many memories are the cause of his failed attempts to stay home. And at first, Danny thinks he's just joking about it. He's trying to reason with him. And you really do feel bad for Danny because, I mean, Danny never really did anything as far as we know. He didn't do anything. So Robert even tries to give Danny a check so that he can start a new life somewhere else. And Danny interprets the offer as a negotiation. And Robert's paying him to leave. And Danny thinks the amount of money on the check is not nearly enough for him to leave. Especially since he knows he's not in the will. And I like that Danny knows specifically he's not in the will. And basically, which he admits, he knows that he knows. And Robert offers him to wire any amount of money to Danny in the morning if he's gone. Danny accepts the deal, and he's really pissed at Robert. I mean, he really thought that they were getting close, and he reminds Robert he will never see his face again, and I thought that was really sad overall, especially in such a lighthearted episode to end with that scene. I thought was really sad, and now I'm worried that Danny's go back to Eric. I really feel like that's going to happen. I mean, now that Eric has this new offer, I feel like he's going to try to get Danny in on it, and I feel like Danny is going to work with him. I really feel like that's going to happen. I really don't want that to happen because I want Danny to be successful, but we'll see. So we see more of Robert's memories. We finally see exactly what happened. We see that she appears to have drowned while in the ocean with Danny, and that is why Robert and Danny do not get along. Because I love that we found that out. It was such a subtle way to do it, and it was amazing, and I loved it. And that's the end of the episode. But overall, guys, such an amazing episode. I love that they didn't show flash forwards in this episode because this episode was more focused on the relationships between the family overall, the relationships on how they are. We saw Danny and Kevin interact. We saw, things that we haven't seen before. We saw, Kevin and Robert interact, which I love seeing. And now we know why Robert and Danny don't get along. And I think it's probably because Robert just doesn't really want Danny in his life because it reminds him of Sarah dying, and he was really close to Sarah. In fact, it seems like he was the closest to Sarah, and I think that's probably why he's most upset that she died because he was probably so close with her, and now that that he feels like Danny is the cause of her death, and I think that's why Danny. I think that's why he beat Danny. I think it was just rage and just things got to him, and that's how their life basically turned to shit. And I love seeing that. I thought that was really well done. But now I'm really worried because now I feel like Danny's going to go back to Eric and it's all going to start over again. I mean, it seemed like Danny was turning his life around, but now that he wants him gone, Danny seems like he's going to leave. So if he leaves, is he going to come back? I mean, he's telling me he's never going to see him again, and I thought that was really sad overall, but we'll see what happens there. Let's talk about this new case that Marco and John are working on. What do you think is actually going on there? I'm very interested in seeing what, more of what's going on, when we find out more about that case. Basically, um, we know that there's this other body that was found, and what's really going on there, I don't really know. We'll see what happens. Now, as far as the whole thing goes with Meg and Alec, I kind of feel like Alec did do this for Meg, but he doesn't want to tell her that because he knows that Meg doesn't really want this and that she's not going to get attached to him. So we'll see what happens there. I'm very worried about Marco. I feel like Marco's going to find out very quickly about Meg and Alec. It just seems inevitable he's going to find out, but we'll see what happens there. I understand Sally's point about the will, but she should at least think about it. It is important that they think about it, even though she doesn't want to think about it. They should think about it, and it's important. They need to. Kevin and Nick, what is that setting up? I like seeing these two interact together. I like seeing that we know who Nick is and why he's so close with Kevin. I like seeing that overall, but why Kevin and Nick? I hope we find out more about them. I hope we see more of what's going on because I think that's really interesting as well. I honestly want to see some more Danny and Kevin interaction. I think some of their interaction was very funny, and that's something I love this episode, is that how funny it was, how lighthearted it was. Definitely, I really enjoyed that. Yeah, the ending was really sad, but it was a much more hopeful episode until the very ending, and that's one of the things I love, is that you really feel hopeful for Danny, and now that, Robert told him he can't stay there anymore, and that Danny told him he's going to be gone, now I feel like their life is about to, turn to shit again. I really do hope that doesn't happen, but it just seems like that's what's going to happen now that that happened, and I really hope that doesn't happen, but it just seems like that's what's going to happen. But overall, guys, best episode of the season by far. Love this episode. This is officially one of the best shows on TV. Honestly, this is one of the best shows on TV. I know I said Daredevil is the best Netflix show. This is my second favorite, I have to say. I mean, I love Orange is the New Black. I love, I love some of the other Netflix shows, but this is my second favorite show on Netflix, and I'm going to talk about why. These characters, one of the things I realized about this episode is that I don't care what these characters do. I love watching them. That's the thing that worked with this episode for me. I know a lot of people say the show is very slow, but here's the thing. If you're attached to these characters, then I don't give a shit because I love these characters. I love seeing what happens to them. I love seeing them interact. I love seeing their story. Just their family I find very interesting. Their story I find very fascinating, and everything about it. I just really love their family. I think that they're a very interesting family. I can't wait to see where the episode goes next week. And again, I was gonna watch episode 5, but then I'm like, you know what? That's enough for me. I've seen enough of Bloodline for this week. I'll watch episode 5 next week because I'm looking forward to it, definitely. But I'm gonna make myself wait because I want to do that. So that's it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. Overall, as I said, best episode of the season. Absolutely loved this episode. And I mean, Bloodline, yeah, it has taken a while for me to get hooked. The first episode, I really liked it. I thought it was an amazing pilot, but I wasn't hooked till last week, and now I'm even more hooked, and that's great. I hope they continue to hook me more and more every episode. To me, it just seems like now every episode is just gonna get better than the last, and if that's true, I think that's awesome because I'd love to see that happen. And I honestly would love to see more flashbacks the way they were done this episode from someone's perspective. I think that was really cool because the whole episode was in Robert's perspective, and I think that worked really well. It made us more aware of how close he was with, Sarah, and I love seeing that. So that's in my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys saw this episode, and I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for a movie review. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.